Let's play a guessing game. I want you to guess what I am. I'll give you a few hints. My mom is my best friend. I would rather spend an evening alone watching a movie or cooking rather than going out. I spend a lot of time with adults. I've been told I have an adult vocabulary. I identify with Adele, Drew Barrymore, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Tiger Woods, just to name a few. Can you guess what I am? I'm an only child. Being an only child has been great, as it's what I've always known. Whenever attending any social event or gathering, I always have a seat secured at the adult table. To be completely honest, after you sit at the adult table once, you never want to return to the kids' table again. I've become acclimated to the polite table manners and clean place settings that the adult table includes, not the chaotic ambiance of the messy kids' table. I've never had to share, so I get undivided attention. This is usually a good thing, considering that I get advice and time from my parents whenever I want. However, it can be slightly overwhelming when I'm the only child my parents have to focus on. This means that I put extra pressure on myself to succeed and do my best, which can be beneficial when the pressure is in moderation. My parents are putting all of their eggs in my basket, and I want to make them proud. Due to my upbringing as an only child, I've developed a strong sense of self due to the independence being an only child entails. Although being an only child has a plethora of negative stereotypes, I want you to realize that only children should be appreciated for our unique perspectives on life. Yes, there are some unfortunate stereotypes that come with the fact that I don't have any siblings. Oftentimes, whenever someone asks, "How many siblings do you have?" I have to respond with a hesitant, "I'm an only child," because I can already anticipate the classic remarks that will soon be made. "You must be so spoiled. Do you get really lonely? I'm assuming you're pretty selfish, right?" These are all false assumptions, for me at least, and I can't help but notice that these beliefs are all negative. What people often fail to realize is that being an only child has not only provided me with a unique upbringing, but a very unique perspective as well. I view life fairly different from other kids my age, and this may be due to the amount of time I spend with my parents and their friends or my ability to be independent. I spent so much time with adults when I was younger that I preferred to talk with them instead of kids my own age. Instead of listening to banter about the recent My Little Pony episode, I'd rather hear about Mike's colonoscopy experience. Essentially, only children need to stop being looked at in a negative light and instead be understood in a different way. The first time I realized I think differently was when I was at a playground around the age of 6. Because I was with my mom all of the time, I'd receive her insight frequently, and because I'm her only child, she wanted to share as much wisdom and perspective as possible. I would observe the other kids enjoying the slides, swings, and seesaws, who would soon run into each other or who would faceplant into the mulch. I would then turn to my mom and say, "That was an accident waiting to happen." I would look up to her and nod and find a safer activity. These types of comments came to fruition due to my mom's urgency for safety and thinking before acting. However, since I heard only her viewpoint, that is what I expressed to others. If we were to walk down the street, my mom would point out to me what was safe and what was not safe. For example, she'd gesture to a guy popping a wheelie on his bike, or girls doing cartwheels on the cement, and she'd tell me those types of things are dangerous. It has caused me to make judgments about others in a very adult-like way. From my personal experience, many only children I meet are similar in this sense. Without even knowing how many siblings someone has, I can usually tell based on their decision-making. It's safe to say that I have a strong sense of reservation about me, as I always think about the outcome to any situation, from when I was 6 at the playground or now being 16 in high school. Most kids my age would view spending time with their parents as a negative or boring event, but for me, I view it as quality time to learn. Dalton Conley, a sociologist at NYU, has concluded that only children tend to be more adult-centric, which means that we're skilled at relating to and conversing with adults. Therefore, because I don't have siblings to share information with me, my parents are my main source, which is something that I can't control but have become accustomed to enjoying. A close relationship with your parents can be cultivated even if you're not an only child. However, since I've been forced into this type of situation, I've had to embrace it. If those of you with siblings thought of your parents as your only source of influence, perhaps you can make closer connections, which would benefit both parties in the long run. Another aspect associated with being an only child is loneliness. Loneliness has developed a pitiful reputation because people assume that if you are alone, then you must be lonely, but this does not have to be the case. When my parents go out to dinner or have to go to work while I'm sick at home, I have no choice but to enjoy myself. I used to be uncomfortable when my parents would shut the door and leave because I was all alone. There was no one to spend time with. However, after years of practice, I've become a master at alone time in the process of enjoying it. Because only children are forced to have alone time, we know how to appreciate ourselves. I now look forward to weekends when I have nothing on my schedule because it's time dedicated for myself. I love this time so much, and although it may be uncomfortable to many of you, I appreciate it. Now don't get me wrong, I love seeing my friends and spending time with others, but when I have a full day to myself, it's wonderful. I do what I would usually do in a day, but independently. And this may sound corny, but when you're by yourself for a whole day, you learn more about yourself. You learn how to make your own fun, decisions, and ultimately enjoy your own presence. I enjoy staying home alone, but also going places alone. For example, going to the beach independently is so pleasant. Even the grocery store is fun too. There's a sense of strength when you can thrive alone. Especially on vacations, alone time is fairly prevalent. If my parents choose to partake in a different activity than myself, my only choice is solidarity. It's up to me to think of something fun to do. I can't rely on siblings' creativity or ideas. If you've never spent a day independently, I would highly recommend it, even if you feel uncomfortable by the idea. But don't worry, if you currently feel uncomfortable being alone, you're not alone. A study at the University of Virginia was conducted, and the two options offered were to either spend time alone or subject yourself to an electric shock. 2/3 of men and 1/4 of women chose the electric shock. Solidarity has become so unfavorable that people would rather endure physical pain than be alone. If we can learn how to become comfortable alone, you might experience some of the advantages I mentioned previously, including the avoidance of electric shocks. And who knows, you might learn something new about yourself that was not previously known. When you are capable of enjoying your own presence, it's extremely valuable. From learning more about yourself to strengthening your character, being alone greatly benefits your confidence, which I know from firsthand experience. If you can be comfortable in your own skin, I believe you can be comfortable with whoever, wherever. I'm not saying that the only way to integrate my perspective into your own life is by being an only child. Anyone and everyone is capable of looking at situations in a different light. The difficult part is getting ourselves to do so. It's so easy to look at life through the same lens we have always used. I won't lie, I struggle to understand the views of people with multiple siblings, but that doesn't mean that I assume that every person with siblings is congruent with certain stereotypes. I don't believe that the youngest siblings are major attention seekers, or that the oldest children are bossy control freaks, but I can understand why those assumptions could be made. The same way that I'm not a selfish maniac who thrives in a dark and desolate cave alone, I'm just someone who has a different upbringing and outlook. However, my outlook is less touched upon, considering that only children make up only 22% of the population, according to the Pew Research Center. We 22% receive unfair assumptions, and those assumptions are oftentimes negative. Yes, only children spend a lot of time alone, but that time is not depressing, nor is it unbearable. But instead, it's enjoyable and pleasant, and research shows that solitude is something a lot of people could benefit from. In addition, spending time with parents and seeking out their advice, usually deemed as a negative, can become a major convenience for everyone. What I've learned is that my parents know a lot, and they have a lot more life lived than I do. If negative assumptions could be transformed into positives, only children would be alleviated of a bad rap, and others could gain new insight. Whether you decide to go spend a day independently or ask your parents for their advice, the ways of an only child could help to enrich your own life. Thank you.